Hi, welcome. Come on down the front. I promise, I've already stepped in it 4 times. This is going to be entertaining for all of you. Maybe a little educational for me, but very entertaining. I've already stepped in tariffs. I've stepped in rebar. I've stepped in, pricing. Okay, I have to say something, and I'm going to wait till everybody's officially in so we can be legal and official, and then I'll introduce myself and my panelists, okay? Yeah, come on down. And the microphones are in the middle. Just take a look around because I'm going to need it out. Good. We still have a few more people coming in. Okay, I'm Terry Savage. I'm your moderator for today and for a couple of panels tomorrow and Friday as well. Yeah, I'll introduce myself in a moment, but let me say this officially and on the record. As with all ReMA events, we follow a strict code of conduct and antitrust policy. Details of both are available on the ReMA website, and they're also on flyers around the room. What I've been told is we can discuss markets, we can discuss pricing, but we can't talk about prices. That's a fine line. I'm fascinated by this industry. I'll give you a little background on myself, my knowledge or lack of. I've been in the markets all my life. I was a founding member of the Chicago Board Options Exchange. I was a trader on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And 2 months ago, I retired after 23 years on the board of directors of CME Group, which might be particularly interesting to this group because our Ferrous scrap contract, I think there's some relevance to how prices are set. So I was delighted to be asked to talk about the industry. Not to mention that my role as an economic commentator and personal finance expert on radio and TV leads me to be talking about the markets and the economy in a big way. Most of you heard this morning that we had a surprising 0.1% decline in the monthly producer prices. That's an interesting thing because, as you know, the Fed will meet next week. And up until this morning, they were widely expected, about 98%, now 100% expected to cut. This on the back, by the way, of the annual jobs revision from March of 24 to March of 25. 9 months of the Biden administration and 3 months of the Trump administration. It appears that they reported 911,000 more jobs created than actually happened. You could take your pick whether it's a conspiracy or whether the data doesn't come in because companies don't report or because the final revisions don't include illegal immigrants on the statistics. But the fact is, the Fed got a huge clue that the labor market is weakening. Today we had wholesale prices tick down instead of the expected up 0.3. By the time you're here tomorrow at this time, you'll see what consumer prices are. So we live in volatile times. That's the economic side, the political side, the tariffs. This is all grist for our steel mill here today. And I want to start out by just putting this in a bigger perspective, since we're not talking about the spreads or what prices will be in 6 months or a year. That's not the goal. I think from thinking about this all the time, that while we are caught up in the tariffs, and by the way, there is a $1 trillion question, which I'll ask you all later and at every panel, which is, by the way, who's paying those tariffs if wholesale prices aren't going up and consumer prices don't pop tomorrow? Where did they collect $1 trillion? But that's another story. We get so caught up in these things that we forget to take a look at the big picture of where we are. And I would like to just start this panel by saying I think, are at the turn of, if we should live long enough to see the impact of this whole AI revolution. When you studied history forever ago, you read that the Gutenberg Bible, the printing presses, revolutionized printing. We learned in school the agricultural revolution, International Harvester right here in Chicago. Today, rich people have horses. Then horses worked the plows and the mules worked the plows. We had the Industrial Revolution. It happened right here. It changed everything. We had the Internet Revolution, which is in very recent memory. And today I can look at my watch and find out the closing stock prices. Now we're on the edge of the AI revolution. It will change everything. It'll change labor. It'll change jobs. It'll change productivity. But at the moment, it's demanding vast resources to construct the infrastructure. And when I talked to traders on the floor in preparation for this, they said, just keep this big picture in mind. Oh yeah, ups and downs. It was stockpiled in copper and then there were only tariffs on this and so forth. But the big picture is we're entering an era where there's going to be tremendous demand on resources, and recycled materials are going to be a critical part of that. So as we start, now I think you all know each other, don't you? You're all comrades out here, but I just want to introduce my two panelists and then pose them a big question before we get to the specifics that you were all gabbing about in the coffee hour. Bob Everson is Vice President and General Manager of RM Recycling and a division of Nucor. He oversees operations across 19 facilities, responsible for driving growth, sustainability, and strategic acquisitions to support the supply of high-quality recycled materials used in steelmaking. And I know you all know David Stickler, who's CEO of Hybar Steel, but he's a global steel guy. As a matter of fact, I learned that that company was formed just 2 years ago with a huge investment to build a technologically advanced, environmentally sustainable scrap metal recycling rebar mill in Osceola, Arkansas. So your geographic spread goes from China to Osceola, Arkansas. We had a brief meeting when I knew less than my studies brought me to today. And what struck me, before we get into the details of recycling and so forth, was that you both have a great pride in today's steelmaking industry. And you think maybe you're not getting the message out. You know, Bob, you started that point.
Yeah, I think the perception of our business it's still kind of stuck in the early 20th century. This isn't your grandfather's steel business anymore. It's just not. It's much safer. It's much cleaner. It's way more high tech. And one of the difficulties that we have is telling that story. We don't do a good enough job of telling our story. We've kind of always flown under the radar, but when we look at talent and we have to attract it into this business, yes, we'll compete with each other for talent, but we're also now with the high tech aspect of our business, we're competing with Google and Microsoft. So we have to figure out how do we reach these folks as they dig into their career paths. And I think one of the great opportunities for us is, yes, the changing with the newer technology and we're going to embrace AI. It's going to help us. But also as we look to decarbonize the steel industry, that is a great opportunity for people that they can rally behind.
David, how would you get that message across? Was there a call to, I mean, aside from everything that might you agree on or disagree on, is there a call to action at the university level, or is it start with those old film strips we watched in grade school with the blast furnaces?
Yeah, well, I think one of the points, Terry, is my mic on? Can you hear me in the background? All right, good. Thank you. One of the things that you've got to put in perspective is that when I started in the steel industry 30 years ago, steel making was 80% brawn, 20% brains. You needed high school linebackers, high school football linemen to literally move the steel around by tongs manually. Today at a company like Hybar, steel making's 90% brains, 10% brawn. All right. And I think that the last project that I was involved in forming and then running, Big River Steel, we were making 5,000 tons of steel per year per worker. Now that doesn't mean a whole lot till I give you this other data point. Some of my competitors, the integrated steel industry, the steel companies you used to drive around when you were in high school going to your lake house.
Okay, time out. I explained. He said, what do you know about steel? I said, well, I grew up in Chicago and my family had a house my grandmother had a house in Lakeside, Michigan. So we would drive around the bottom of the lake on Friday night or Thursday night when, I would be sitting in the back seat, and all of a sudden there would be this unmistakable, horrible smell. And we just called it Pewitown. And it was what it was. And he said, Terry, that's what you think of steel. And I said, yes, I do still, because that's how I grew up. So now, having disclosed that, okay, tell me what it looks like.
The point is, new steel making, last one we did, 5,000 tons of steel per year per worker. Competition from the integrated U.S. Steel, Cleveland Cliffs, 900 tons of steel per year per worker. That allowed us, in a small little town in northeast Arkansas, on several years, pay on average over $200,000 of compensation. That's high school graduates, 2 years of trade school. These are life-changing wages. We'll get into in a minute, I know, technology, but you come to a modern, efficient steel mill, you ask if you're running today, everything is automated. And out into the public, universities, the message is steel companies need marketing, they need IT, they need logistics, they need metallurgy, they need accounting, they need finance, they need healthcare. It's all there. And with the wage levels that we pay, knock on wood, we've been very, very, very fortunate to not struggle to attract the talent that we need. This is a great industry that people can make significant money if they get with the right or get on the right platform, Terry.
So before we move on, is there we see headlines, Google or whatever it is, or Apple now, paying $1 million just sign-on bonus to these young, okay, they're MIT graduates, but still $1 million just to sign on and lots of stock options. What is it? I mean, are there enough people, talented people for you to attract? And what could and should this industry be doing to make these jobs known?
Well, I'd like to think that, similar to Dave here, Nucor, we have 32,000 people. We're very proud of an average salary of probably over $100,000 and just similar type of education. And we have all types. But in the majority of these small towns that we're in, hey, we're the employer of choice. But that's changing. If Ford's going to put in a 5,000 teammate battery factory in Kentucky, where are those people going to come from? So now what we have to do is, one, we have to make our industry attractive, but we also have to go from not just the colleges, we have to get into the high schools. We also have to get into the grade schools and into the trade schools and tell our story so these people know who we are and they understand what their opportunities are. College isn't for everybody. The ones that do go, we have great jobs for them. For the ones that don't want to go, we have a great path to his point of life-changing salaries that they can be part of.
I nominate the two of you to head up committee to make that known. Seriously, the media should know about it. There's so many complaints about low-paying jobs and minimum wage, and a family can't. And there are a lot of hardworking people in those minimum wage jobs. So I think your guys are inspiring, and I hope you get the message out. I really do. Okay, now moving on to all the controversial topics that I uncovered. Okay. I don't know where to start. Let me start at the global supply and demand picture. And I'm just going to toss up a word and see what happens. China.
China will continue to be a dominant player in many, many, many fields. My wife is Chinese. We have a home in Beijing, China. I've worked with and for representing them on financing transactions, some of the largest state-owned Chinese companies. The issue that people have is they say, well, China has too much steelmaking capacity. They do. People say, well, this is the year they're going to cut that capacity. They're not. If you look at it, what is the Chinese government most fearful of? It's civil unrest.
Right. No jobs for the people.
And so you're exactly right.
So they use the people to build the factory.
In these communities that these steel mills operate in, they're oftentimes the largest employer. Okay. You're not going to have a local mayor, a local province chief, the folks in Beijing overseeing the entire economy, cutting capacity and having all of those former employees out in the street with nothing to do. So you have to figure out a different path to have the globe absorb some of that steel.
Okay. China's going to keep exporting. They have the capacity. They need to keep the mills working because they need to keep the people working to avoid a revolution. But what if we tariff Chinese steel?
Well, we have, and the first thing that happens is the Chinese, very clever. They'll ship some substrate material to a country like Vietnam, have that substrate rolled into steel. That steel then comes into the U.S. Other ways that they'll produce semi-finished steel products, ship them to Mexico, have a couple bolts put on, and voila, through the U.S.-Mexican trade rules, here comes that product in the United States. So they're always going to find a way to, if I could use the term broadly, cheat. Okay, they're going to cheat because they have to keep producing steel and find a home for that steel.
Bob, what's the implication for a company like Nucor, which manufactures here and I guess at least has to compete domestically unless there are restrictions on it?
Yeah, we will compete against anybody. We welcome that challenge, but what we don't want to have happen is that we have our hands tied behind our back. We want free and fair trade. And that is the biggest challenge that we have with this. If the total capacity of steel is 100 million tons and China has the capacity of over 1 billion tons, and let's say they need half of that, that's got to find it's going to find its way somewhere. And how do you compete with that with currency manipulation? That's really difficult. And so, that's a challenge that we want to face it head on. We want to be a country that makes things. If the easy money is not to make anything and just buy everything and do modular type of things, we don't feel that is long-term success for the United States.
All right. Now, I know you're brimming over with the answer to this question, but I'm going to start with you, Bob. So are tariffs the answer? And what's been the impact?
Are tariffs the answer? I mean, right now what is happening is that is the way the game is being played. I think it's very complicated. We wake up every day and try to figure out how do we deal with these things. But if that is the avenue that levels the playing field, and that's where we're at right now, yes. I mean, the impact has been positive to a certain degree, but it is complicated.
I might be missing, I'm sure I'm missing something. If you could wave the magic wand in Washington as a policymaker or in any other way, what would you do you said it's important that we have steel making capacity. We can't be flooded and buy cheap stuff and not make stuff because that's a national importance. If you were king for the day, what would you do?
Do I get extra wishes?
Yeah.
I'd like to do that. If you're king for the day, look, I think we want to just keep this simple. We want a level playing field that is absent of these things like currency manipulation, policy type of things that make us less competitive. We would want things set up so it makes sense for the investment dollars in the world to come to the United States and make things.
Okay. Now, I'm going to turn to you because you said to me, just ask me. I'm going to toss that word up, tariffs.
Yeah, tariffs are a two-edged sword. There is some good, but there's an awful lot of bad. All right. Tariffs in general, they stifle, let's say, competitive behavior. Older, more antiquated steel producers have time to continue living when they're probably past their useful life, right? the companies that need tariffs, and I'm setting aside Nucor's long-held view of free and fair trade. If there was free and fair trade, you would stop spending millions and millions of dollars on lobbyists in Washington and all that executive time lobbying for import restrictions. Free and fair trade, you can compete with anybody in the world. Your quality, the way you manage your companies, your cost structure, etc. So, tariffs stifle competitive behavior. People don't have to, innovate, become more efficient, look at their head counts. I mean, I've got companies that, again, look, 900 tons of steel per year per worker. Simple executive decisions could be made to improve that by a factor of at least 2 times. Anyway, from my own perspective right now, I'm about to embark on two $1 billion each expansion projects. All right. I can absorb the 20% general tariffs, country by country.
Excuse me. Expansion in what? What are they?
We're going to build 2 more rebar mills. So right now we have, our first $1 billion was spent up in Osceola, Arkansas.
And are they going to use scrap as the raw?
Oh, absolutely.
All scrap.
Absolutely. So,
okay.
So rebar is made with 100% scrap. The next flat rolled mill I build, I'm also going to try and run it with 100% scrap. Typically today, a flat rolled mill will take 70% scrap, 30% virgin material, pig iron, HBI, or DRI. Okay. But anyway, so on the expansion, I can absorb and still get an equity return that I need after 20% tariffs, which I pay. Please don't anybody believe that the, technology companies that produce the equipment overseas are going to pay the tariffs. They're not. Some people were in the audience yesterday. I was giving a talk down in Birmingham, Alabama, and I asked the technology supplier, I said, okay, SMS, are you going to pay the tariffs? I read in the newspaper, I heard from Washington that, yeah, people who sell things in the United States are going to pay the tariffs. Not happening. I'm paying the tariffs.
Oh, on the technology and things that you import to build the factory.
I would buy it from the United States, but these big mill stands haven't been forged in the United States for 100 years.
Okay, here we go.
Okay? No way. I gotta buy them overseas.
To build a plant, you have to buy stuff overseas, and you're going to pay the tariff.
I'm not only going to pay 20%. 3 weeks ago in the middle of the night on a Friday, the administration came out with 400 tariff line codes that says you pay a 50% tariff. Anything that's, made out of steel, aluminum, or copper. I told our guys on Saturday morning, I said, go out into the mill, take a bunch of magnets and put a magnet on everything that's made out of steel. You're going to run out of magnets. I can't afford the 50% tariff. So what I'm hoping to do, not there yet, is I'll tell the administration I will pay the tariffs, 20%, 50%, whatever the heck it is. But once I do what you're asking everybody to do, invest in America, which I've been doing for 30 years, create good paying industrial jobs, which I've been doing for 30 years. Once I do that, at least give me a tax credit on the tariffs that I've paid. I think that's fair.
Ooh, do you think you'll get a hearing in Washington on that?
Well, we certainly will get a hearing, but
forget Congress, but I mean from anybody.
Well, that's the issue. There's a team within the White House that has been put in place to streamline investment. This is a perfect topic. I know Nucor and some of your lobbyists have some ideas that are, let's say, heading in the direction that I just mentioned. I can't do it by myself. I need a big company like Nucor to help me.
Bob, are you into we're getting kind of political, but I don't mean it in a political way, but it's a numbers thing. You wake up and you're building huge plants, and the stuff that goes into them to create the jobs that bring the taxes in and the capacity in America, that's
Nucor is doing the same. They have huge capital investment projects underway and huge projects on the table.
So you need Nucor, sorry, my naivete, but you need to import stuff to build factories. It's not just the scrap that's a cost. It's a cost of the stuff to build.
I was talking about the mill equipment. Nucor and Hybar are in the same game.
So how do you?
So if you buy a crane, there's a tariff on that crane that we'll have to absorb.
because we don't make cranes.
Well, if it's a certain crane that
Right,
we don't
whatever.
make here and
Yeah.
we are
The
importing
big,
that crane, that
the
would be.
big heavy hot metal cranes.
Yeah.
The most of them are overseas.
This is a lot more complicated than most of America understands.
There's huge
Thank you,
complications.
she said, with like a light bulb going off. Thank you very much.
Terry, let's just look at any time the federal government sticks its nose in, there's unintended consequences. Here's one very recently. So ICE goes and raids the Hyundai motor plant down in just outside of Savannah, Georgia. 500 people thrown out of this country because they don't have the right paperwork to be working there. So the administration says, okay, we'll fix that. For foreign companies that are making investments in the United States, we'll go ahead and waive those visa requirements. Sounds good, right? Well, wait a minute. I'm a domestic company that's building, has the same need as those foreign companies that are coming in. Well, wait a minute. You can't just do it for the foreigners, then you're hurting me. So these are the unintended consequences, and that's real time. That's just happened. There was
2 days ago, Seoul sent a plane note.
Yeah.
They're taking them back. Now you have no immigrants and you have no immigrants. How are you going to run your plants with technology?
Yeah, well, technology for sure. But again, if you look, the U.S. taking actions that frown upon engineering talent coming and working in this country, AI talent, machine learning coming and working in this country. Japan, they're extending the olive branch to engineering graduates from India, where the U.S. is no olive branch, don't come in. So it's going to hurt us long term. These are the unintended consequences.
I want to move on for a minute, but that was really pretty fascinating. And if you have questions, we can get them going again. But there was sort of like an agenda of things that the producers of this show thought I might want to cover. And there was a whole category of questions revolving around changing standards and grades of ferrous, which I understand. Well, let's start with creating a cleaner product, which is really what you're focused on, I think, Bob.
Yeah, so what is happening is we're making this transition from blast furnace steel making to electric arc furnace steel making, which is more of a circular way to make steel. The demand for raw materials is increasing. And so what we're trying to do is figure out ways that we can take existing grades of obsolete grades that may not have the chemistry spec and upgrade them. So now there's investments being made to an advanced sortation to take grades of, if we shredded your old car and we had a copper level of a 30, now we have ways to reduce that copper level by almost 30%.
Is there a payoff to that? I mean, does it cost a lot to do?
Why wasn't it done before? Because there wasn't a payoff for it. The market had abundant raw materials. They didn't need it, and it was cost prohibitive. You wouldn't make that investment. But now, as there is higher demand for grades of scrap that can reach a certain spec that you no longer have to buy prime scrap or pig iron. This is where the opportunity is, and those investments are being made now. So we're starting to see a lot of progress in that, and we're looking to build on that.
Now, as the whole idea of recycle is clean, but that's kind of gone out of favor in the last few months. I mean, as in, we'll stop making windmills and solar, but we will baby drill. Are you still, in an economic way, forget political way, incented to produce cleaner materials or use cleaner processes for dealing with scrap and so forth? Have those incentives changed?
Yeah, in our space, we are certainly seeing it because the demand is going up. So if 70% of the U.S. steel making capacity is EAFs, they want different raw material streams to make them competitive. So if they had to buy pig iron before out of the ground, but now they can use a grade of scrap that we lowered the copper in, it gives them more of a consistent raw material, they can pull that lever.
So what about the lever of the grade of ferrous that is acceptable? Wasn't that your territory?
Well, really, hats off to Nucor and several other groups in this room for really making those investments and those advancements to produce cleaner shred material. And shred material, you take appliances, cars, put them through a shredder, and you want to get the contaminants out. So number one is you're going to have a higher quality scrap material, which reduces your need for the virgin materials that I talked on. The other thing that's happening, and I saw this when we did the Severcore mill down in Columbus, now SDI Columbus, is if you talk to a steel buyer and they say, oh, I need an 8 copper level in my steel, and you ask them, well, who told you that? They'll look back in their archives and they'll say, well, yeah, 30 years ago when we were dealing with LTV, National Steel, Republic Steel, Jones and Laughlin, US Steel, all that.
Of names,
so yeah, they're all gone. But those integrated steel mills, they worked with the car companies, the appliance companies, the pipe companies, and said, okay, these are the quality steel you need. Well, we showed Whirlpool for their dryer drums when I was running Severcore. Hey, you don't need an 8 copper. You can use a 12. That way my feedstock will be less costly. The steel I'm selling you is less costly. Yes, your men and women on the operating floor might have to, be a little bit more attentive to the tolerances of their equipment and everything else. So you're going to see a cleaner flow of scrap. The auto guys they're going to have to buy from the EAFs, the electric arc furnace steel mills, because there's not going to be any integrateds left. Once the golden share that the Trump administration got from Nippon is gone, those mills, they just can't compete with the fine mills that a company like Nucor builds and we build.
It occurs to me that both of you are on the mill side, but I met a lot of people out there who are on the
I think, Bob, you want to explain your
you also,
your
I know you collect.
Both sides.
But a lot of people out there on the collection side, if that's the direction the industry is going from the mill side, what's the incentives or the lessons or the future for the people that are on the collecting side?
Well, I think from the collection side, what you have is hopefully a way more consistent market than what you've seen. So if there's more and more EAF steel capacity and more demand for scrap metal, that is a more consistent market. There's people in here that can give a lot of war stories where there'll be times where there wasn't a demand and that scrap metal would either not get collected or would sit there. Now what happens is there's liquidity for scrap metal here in the United States, and I think that's a great thing.
Well, then why are scrap prices so low historically?
That's a great question.
Who says they're so low? I've never met someone who sells scrap that tells me scrap prices are too high. Just like I've never met an auto dealer that tells me, the cost of a car is too high.
A vote.
All right.
I don't care who you are out there. How many people think scrap prices, metal, ferrous, are too low? Oh, okay. How many think, gosh, they're too high. We need to buy it cheaper to make it into stuff? 4 people. You're outvoted.
No, but I think you have to talk about what is the spread.
Okay, what's the spread?
The spread between what folks in this audience buy their raw materials at, what their cost of processing the raw materials are at, and then what can they sell that scrap for, okay, after it's fully processed. So it's no Terry. It's no different than me. If someone says, Dave, what do you think of scrap prices? Are they too high or too low? I say, I don't know. I got to check one other number. What's the steel price? Okay. I mean, I can't just comment steel prices or scrap prices are too low.
What's the spread right now?
Is it on a spot market? It's in. I can buy scrap and have close to a $500 metal spread right now. I just did.
Historically, is that low or high?
Oh, that's high.
High spread.
But not as high as I've seen it. Okay.
When did you see it higher? What era?
I've seen it higher probably 5 or 6 times in my career. I've seen it in excess of $500 a ton.
Okay.
So it's not the highest.
I know we're not talking about prices specifically. I'm just trying to get the concept of what should the collectors, what are you doing, Bob, as a matter of fact, to improve? I know that you collect a lot. You have a lot of facilities that collect. What is it that you like to see? What are you doing? What do you hope that people who sell to you are doing to make things more profitable and efficient?
Yeah, well, as far as from a buying standpoint, what you want is a volume of supply. You know, you think about, I'll go to a perfect example. There are a lot of aluminum folks here. The recycling rate in the state of Kentucky is like 15% for aluminum cans. And the state of Kentucky is a huge aluminum producing state. We need more recycling. And the story in aluminum is pretty exciting. I mean, within 90 days, you can take a recycled can and it's on the shelf as a new can. That's how efficient it is. If we buy scrap metal into our scrap metal yard or scrap yard in Cincinnati, Ohio, we'll shred it that day. We'll put it on a barge the next day. We'll send it to our steel mill in Gallatin, Kentucky. And then within 2 weeks, it's new steel. That's how efficient it is. It's so efficient. And I think that's a great story. And you know, we talk about the sustainability piece. That's what you want people to get excited about.
Well, they drink a lot of stuff in cans in Kentucky. I've been there.
Yes,
so
they
where
do.
does it go? Out the car window?
It's usually in bottles, but we'll drink some cans too. But you're right. I think they're taking the easy way out and just throwing it away.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
And we don't, and this is a really naive question. Then I'm going to ask for your questions. Okay. But we don't, you know, there was days when a long time ago, I guess it is, the kids collected cans for money. Is with the spread being so great? I know that's aluminum, but is that not happening anymore?
It's all relative. And I think that, you know, from the volumes that we've seen, yeah, if the market relative to when the last market, it's typically a monthly market where you're coming from. These collection rates are decent. It's not like because the spread is so high that the recycling rates are low.
Now,
okay.
So let me just make one point because that's interesting. So what I've seen over my career is now I am talking about nominal prices. When nominal prices, and I'll talk scrap metal, when nominal prices for scrap metal are here, the gentleman with the pickup truck will get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, go out, yes, a peddler will go out and work his tail off to fill up that pickup truck, take it to a processing yard and get paid, oftentimes in cash. When nominal prices are down here, he'll stay in bed and find something else to do at 5 a.m. Okay? That's the way the obsolete market, in my humble opinion, works. All right? So nominal prices to an extent impact the flow of obsolete scrap.
Gotcha.
Not prompt industrial.
All right, everybody. What did I miss? Time for your questions. And Annette's got a microphone she's walking around, so you don't even have to go up into the aisle. Would you just identify yourself? And for my purposes, since everybody probably knows you, tell me what it is you do.
My name's John Sacco. I own and operate a recycled materials facility in Bakersfield, as well as a equipment manufacturer for the industry. Quick comment. Yesterday, I followed Dave at the AIST conference, and I addressed the issue of attraction and the talent, what we can do. My only comment is, until the steel companies decide they want to spend more than $50,000 a year on their image, you're going to get what you get. No offense. Dave, talk about technology. In filming of Repurposed, the ladle crane operator, I actually filmed inside a ladle crane operator picking up a molten, when does that go into AI, and when does that operator become replaced with AI? But that doesn't mean that jobs aren't going to be needed to support AI.
Great question, John, and certainly enjoy seeing you up here again today, following yesterday. The ladle crane operator in a melt shop, I would consider it one of the toughest jobs. You're up there moving, hot metal hour by hour, minute by minute. I mean, it's a tough job. That could all be automated today. There's no reason I need to have a young man or a young lady sitting up in the cab of that ladle crane 12 hours a day during their shift. So everything can be automated to some degree. At the last mill, Big River Steel, our tagline was, we're a technology company that just happens to make steel. Again, remember my statement. Used to be 80% brawn, 20% brains. Now it's 90% brains, 10%. My best workers are people who've grown up working with the joysticks and working on the computer screens, etc. Nucor, some of their operating pulpits now are going to be completely removed from the steel making areas. Improve safety, everything will done with cameras, screens. Now, some of the old timers tell me, "Oh, Dave, we need to smell it, we need to feel the vibrations, all of that." Nonsense. If you can fly a, jet all the way around the world without even looking through the front windshield, you can certainly run an electric arc furnace.
Are you doing that? It's like doctors operating robotically from another state.
Yeah, your West Virginia mill is going to have your pulpits outside of the melt shop area.
Yeah, we're doing it there. We're also doing it even in the shredding operations. And most of these shredders, the operator sits within 10 feet right on top of the shredder itself. And we just put in a state-of-the-art facility in Kansas City, and that operator now is not there anymore. It's a way.
Each of you named, is that one of the coolest things you've done? Or each of you name the coolest innovation that's come about because of technology that's really happening, not that could happen one day, but that you're doing right now. Would that be your thing? Get the shredder operators off the machines?
Oh, I think some of the coolest things on the recycling side that we're doing is dropping the copper out of a normal shredded stream. I think that being able to do that and spend that money and getting that technology where it's at, the lever that it allows our steel mills and other steel mills to pull is, it's been significant. It's good.
So I'd say what I'm most fascinated by is when I go in our automated, warehouses, they operate 24/7 with a series of cranes, moving the finished steel around, getting it ready to load on the truck, on the barge, or on the rail car. There's nobody in there. They operate 24/7. We say, here's when the deliveries are scheduled for. You figure out, you optimize where the best place to put that steel is. And it's safe. It's flawless once you get it dialed in, and it works. And unfortunately, that replaces, a handful of crane operators that we otherwise would have needed and created jobs for. But because we have so few people in these small rural towns, I can pay those average wages, as I mentioned before, over $200,000 a year.
For the people you do need. Sounds like the Amazon warehouse pictures, videos we've seen.
I think the difference is we pay wages where maybe some of the Amazon people don't.
Absolutely. Okay. Another question? Yes.
My name's Al Cozy, Cozy Recycling here in Chicago. I have to say I have to sympathize with you, and maybe John can comment a little more. As a growing company, most of the equipment that we buy comes from overseas because it's just not manufactured here anymore. And, it was one thing when they threw 15 or 20% tariffs on the countries that manufacture this equipment. But now they're adding a 50% steel tariff on top of it as well. So if we want to buy equipment, and we do, it's impossible to get a quote from the manufacturer because he doesn't know in total what he's going to be charged for it. So it's become a very frustrating situation because you're unable to buy a piece of equipment. The average piece of equipment we're going to buy is probably $2 million, and we don't know if it's going to be $2 million or if it's going to be $2.5 million or it's going to be $3 million when that equipment comes in. So it's very frustrating. So in my opinion, the tariffs have been very detrimental there. And I have to say I go back with Nucor to the Ken Iverson days and the John Correndi days. And in those days, they were very anti-government interference in the marketplaces, where the domestic integrated mills were looking for protection at the time. Nucor was very much against that. And that kind of flipped when Dan D'Amico became president and chairman of the company. And it seems to me, most of our customers are small manufacturers of metal products, and they've been devastated by what's happened. China's a problem. We have to admit that China's a problem. But the tariffs that have been put on, I only see one beneficiary of the tariffs in the country, and that's the domestic steel industry. Because if you look at, you should have whatever kind of spread you can. The market should determine what your spread is against your competition. But you have to face the fact that if you look at the price of hot rolled coil in the U.S. today, it's probably, the last I looked, it was $820, $840 a ton. The European price for hot rolled coil is $600 a ton, and the Chinese price for hot rolled coil is $420 or $450 a ton. Our customers are put at a tremendous competitive disadvantage versus what happens to their competitors on the world stage.
So,
Comment? Go ahead.
yeah, Al, you know, your reference to Ken Iverson, John Karenni, those are two legends. I had a great fortune to work side by side with John Karenni for a number of years as we're building these steel mills. And you're right. You know, Ken and John were free traders. John used to always be in watching amazement as Nucor was spending its shareholder capital lobbying for protectionism of the steel industry, when all it was really benefiting in reality, or significantly benefiting, was the integrated steel mills, keeping them in business longer. Okay. But that was when China was just ramping up its steel production and hadn't peaked out at the capacity that it has today. So to the point that Nucor currently has is we're free traders. We got to figure out a way for this pure dumping. So, but good to see you again.
We have another question.
Yeah, this is for Bob. Bob,
Wait, tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Bob Foster. I'm with a company called Campbell Mannion and Associates. You've twice mentioned copper as kind of an initiative, and then came back and said that it was a key innovation for Nucor. Is this something that is specific, proprietary, patented to just Nucor, or is this something that will go across the whole recycling, shred industry, et cetera, et cetera?
No, I think you're starting to see certainly a trend across the industry. We have been making low copper shred for 20 years, but now what you're seeing is that technology is getting invested in across way more players than just us. So it's starting to evolve into like I said, another grade of scrap metal that steel mills, EAFs, can certainly partake in.
So this is done not at the actual mill site. This is done at the shredding operation.
We do it at both.
Oh, you do?
We do it at both. We have a circuit that takes in shred at Berkeley. We have a circuit that does it at Hertford, but then we do it at our own yards, and then you're also seeing third-party scrap companies across the country do it as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Is that more profitable because you get to sell the copper that's the byproduct of that, as opposed to just letting it melt into?
We hope so. But for the longest time, we were kind of alone in that technology and what we were doing, because it wasn't really, valued in the marketplace until that demand is starting to change. And now you're seeing some value there.
For copper. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Next.
Yeah, hi, my name is Andy Imes. I'm a materials scientist at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. We're a standards organization, and you've already alluded to the fact that you're thinking about opening composition specifications to better facilitate higher scrap intake into EAF. And so with that in mind, I want to just give you an opportunity to possibly address that a little bit more explicitly. I'm curious what you need from a standards perspective to facilitate higher scrap rates.
So I think really I'm just going to frame it up this way. I'm going to compare the auto industry to the railroad industry. So the railroad industry would historically dictate to the rail car manufacturers, okay, we just had a tanker car, fall off the tracks and explode. You need to use this thick of steel. Okay. So they would dictate to the rail car manufacturers this thick of steel of this particular grade. Where the auto industry, the government says, okay, we need a car to be able to withstand a crash at 15 miles an hour, no more than this damage. We need a roll bar that can take a SUV and roll it 3 times. And then the industry can innovate. All right. So what happens, finally we got the rail car industry in Washington to say, hey, instead of just adding weight to the tanker cars, which makes the tanker cars roll across those bridges because of weight limitations, 50, 60% full, because the weight is in the car itself and not in the oil that they're carrying. It's ridiculous. We said we have steels that can actually stretch because you don't want them to puncture. So let us be more like the auto industry, work with the rail car manufacturers to take advantage of the high-tech steels that we're making. So what I would tell you is anything to let the industry evolve and, develop these standards itself. Again, nothing against Washington, nothing against the federal government, but as I said before, anytime I've seen in my career the federal government does something where they're trying to be helpful, other consequences occur. I mean, one of the silliest ones was 20 years ago. They said, okay, you have to have these low flush toilets. Okay, water. Well, that was an unmitigated disaster because there was more water being used. All right. Sounds good on the surface, but in reality, it's not. So the people in this room, Nucor's leadership in the industry in many, many ways, what George is doing with some of his yards, I mean, it really just unleash the mental talent and stay out of our way and we'll be just fine.
Oh, which leads me to the other buzzword I was going to toss up there. And then, by the way, anybody with a question, raise your hand and Ned'll come around with the mic way in the back. You have to run. Oprah taught me that. You don't have to run too fast because I have a good question. So I want to put up this buzzword, regulation. We never got around to talking about that. Is that, as opposed to tariffs, we're talking about regulation. What's the state of regulation in the country? And is it, do you have a sense that under this administration it will be more sensible or hopes for that anyway?
I guess if I just talked about regulatory issues, I mean, it is really difficult to build things in this country, whether it's a road, a transmission line, whatever. It's really, really hard. If you kind of contrast two different industries, if you look at AI, it's rapidly evolving and there's so much innovation there. Policymakers are a little reluctant to want to put any kind of regulation on it because they'll feel it'll stifle progress. But if you went to put a state-of-the-art facility in, the regulatory burden is so heavy. It takes so long to get things approved, to get things done. It puts us as a country at a competitive disadvantage.
Well, you get Nucor, has a voice in Washington. Do you get? I mean, not your personal voice, but do you get the sense that this was part of this administration's stated purpose, certainty about taxes and the so forth, and dealing with overwhelming regulation? Do you have any sense of whether that might be changing now?
I think it's an everyday battle. I think it's very complicated, and I think this is something that we as industry in the United States have been working on for a long, long time. Whether we're making advancements now or not, I don't know if I can comment.
I had an experience sitting on the Market Regulatory Committee the board committee, level committee at the MERC, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, in 2016. But before that, we were just overwhelmed with these young kids who asked for the same thing 5 different ways. I mean, it was, I could talk about it now. I'm off the board. It was insane. In fact, I said to the guy who ran that division, I said, you have the patience of a saint. Well, I mean, look at the money we're spending on this. This is ridiculous. Terry, you can't say that out loud. They're here. But within a week of the first Trump administration, it was like someone had turned off the magnet, turned off the energy to that whole regulatory apparatus, that the agency that regulates the industry. I mean, not that people are going to let people get away with anything, but I had a front row seat at what political will can do when it comes to regulation. Is the recycled, I know your steel mill industry gets a hearing, but do you think that the recycled materials part of the industry gets enough of a hearing?
Oh, I don't. I think it's very difficult when you talk about us. We're an on-Broadway player, and so we are going to do everything to the letter of the law. Do I think it's hard for us to compete? What we would like to see is equal enforcement of the laws that are already in place. And so I think from a stormwater and all of the regulations that are on us, I don't know if we can say that we've seen, because of this administration, some massive change in what has been expected of us.
Real quick, one of the issues that we see is we've had great success in building steel mills in the southern United States. We all follow the same federal EPA guidelines. It's just the way that states, prioritize. A perfect example is a company we sold Big River to, U.S. Steel. They had spent 3 years trying to get an environmental air permit to build a new melt shop in Pennsylvania. They came to us and said, "Hey, Dave, we want to build a new mill. How long for the permit?" I said, if we hurry up, probably do it in 6 months. We were both wrong. It took 5 months. So same rules, just different state organizations. But you talk about water discharge, you're absolutely right. We discharge oftentimes into river systems. We pump the water out of the ground 1,500 feet deep, use it, clean it up, and discharge it in the river. It's usually cleaner. But those tend to be, problematic in getting those discharge permits. So our mills, we're going to be zero discharge. So we'll use the water, clean it up, and then we'll reuse it. The only thing we'll lose is through evaporation. So we make decisions because we want to avoid some of those regulatory requirements.
Ooh, that's fascinating. I think we have another question in the back.
Thank you guys for this talk. So my name is Guillermo Gutierrez. I'm the founder of a company called Eco Mercantile Corporation. And we're developing a smart scanner with AI to more quickly identify and characterize metals. As I've been we're developing the technology right now, and some of the biggest challenges that we found, is number one, there's a lot of appetite in the industry, I think, to figure out how to use AI, but there's also, a huge challenge in actually convincing people to work with some of these newer startups and invest in some of these at this riskier stages of early technology. And then on the other side, we found that there's challenges with investors that like to invest in this type of technology in really not thinking that the recycling market alone is big enough to invest in a company like this. So I'm wondering if you guys can speak more to how do you really convince people, even not on your size of company, but even in smaller size companies, to really uptake and work with some of these newer startups that are bringing this automation into the industry.
Guillermo, thank you. Before you leave the mic, how did you fund your startup?
So we've been doing we've been doing it for about 18 months, looking at metals. So far it's been me. I used to work in oil and gas, so I had the opportunity to do that. And we got a grant for it. And now we're looking for more funding. That's why I'm here.
It sounded like you were looking for investors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, qualified investors, right? Offered only by a prospectus, right? Yeah. How much money are you trying to raise?
So right now we're looking at raising about $1 million.
And what will that get you if you do it?
So it'll get us to our MVP with the actual hardware system. And it'll also get us to our MVP in this, in the, data models themselves.
Terry, you're like auditioning for Shark Tank or something.
Yeah, I feel like it. Yeah. And by the way, does your system work?
That's what we're proving out right now. There's a lot of challenges because we're trying to do a whole bunch of different metals at once.
Does that sound like that could happen?
Well, look, it's very difficult, and I told you before, we have been making low copper shred at one shredder for 20 years, and it took over to the last 2 or 3 years for more and more people to start getting into that business because the market, it didn't pay for it. It did not pay for it. And if you think about our business, it's a commodity-based business that goes up and down. Capital is precious. Al talked about it. A machine is, a material handler is $1 million. What are you going to spend your capital on to get that competitive advantage, to get some type of differentiation? That's really hard. But we have to be open to those things as things evolve. But it's not easy in our business.
Do you think smaller people that collect shred, they wouldn't be interested? Does it have to start at the top with big companies perfecting technologies, or do you think there's room for innovation at smaller companies?
So
That was the question.
I think oftentimes larger companies, innovation sometimes gets blocked. So it takes the, boots on the ground entrepreneurs scratching and clawing, having started businesses for decades now. It's not easy. The fact that you've contributed your own capital, as I'm raising these billions of dollars for steel mills, I found, hey, if I'm going to put my own money in, it makes it easier to raise the money. So good for you. But that's where I think the government can play a role. Some of the research grants, some of the laboratories that, was it Andy? Was that Andy that you mentioned, where you work? That's really finding these entrepreneurial projects, making sure that the projects are in tune with what the industry is looking for. Oftentimes grant dollars go to projects that even if they prove out, there's no market value in those. So I think that's where government should maybe redirect some of its focus and attention, finding entrepreneurs, finding ideas. You throw 10 things against the wall, one or two of them are stick, and you're going to have a great track record.
Yeah, I know it's sort of oxymoronic, though, the government helping entrepreneurs. And yeah.
Well, maybe that'll keep them preoccupied from us.
All right, we've got about 5 more minutes. 1 or 2 more questions. And I don't want to drive you to drink, but I know that's what we stand in the way of. So anybody out there got any comments, questions, forecasts? I'm looking at some of you who promised me you'd step up. Is there one okay, good. Here we go.
I'm curious, Dave, do you think that with China dumping on the world market like they are, and the way it depresses the export market, and as you said a minute ago, there's no way they're going to stop because, they've got to. So I guess the question is how does the export market ever recover? Do you think that these other countries put in their own 232s all the way across? Because I don't see any other way to stop China unless the other countries just put blocks in so they can't ship scrap.
Well, I think the question is, does a country like Vietnam, does a country like Malaysia, does a country like Thailand really need its own steel industry? The answer is absolutely not. All right. But every growing, advancing country, what's the first thing they want to prove that they're a strong country? A steel industry. There are plenty of homes for that Chinese steel in Southeast Asia. It doesn't have to flow to the United States, but all the money that has been spent by the Vietnamese government, the Thai government, the Malaysian government, the Indonesian government, the list goes on, shouldn't have been spent. All right? Shouldn't have been spent. Those countries, the U.S. always you hear, we need a strong steel industry because of national defense. To a certain degree, that's correct, but it's overstated by the politicians time and time again when they're talking about the domestic steel industry. Those countries don't need, a steel industry for their national defense. They're going to enter into, security arrangements. It's elsewhere, George. So.
All right.
I guess one last comment. Well, go ahead, Terry.
No, did you want to follow up?
Did I answer your question? I don't know.
You did.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, but I guess the question, but they have them. So, right now, do you think, are they going to let their steel industry die, or will they put it
let's say this. They can exacerbate the problem if the Vietnamese, the Malaysians, the Thais, the Indonesians keep building new mills. They'll just exacerbate the problem. Those economies are going to grow. Their populations are going to grow. The one that's interesting to watch is the India. All right. They're putting barriers up and trying to protect their steel industry right now. That would have been a natural home for some steel, but India's, maybe taking a little bit different route. The other thing is we've all got to watch, to the extent that there is a settlement at some point with the Ukrainian, Russian, conflict that's going on, you're going to start to see some of that steel and semi-finished product, begin to flow out of Russia again, which will put even more pressure on the global steel industry.
Right. And so then, just a completely different topic. We talked a little bit about copper in shreds and about the work that's being done. But what I see from Nucor right now is not that they're putting their own equipment in to process it. They're not really paying a premium. And so, I guess I'm curious whether you think that that's going to continue, where the steel mills are going to put their own equipment in to remove the copper, or whether they're going to pay a premium to remove the copper.
Yeah. So Nucor and Steel Dynamics have a different philosophy than I have. When we did Steel Dynamics 30 some years ago, OmniSource was a big partner of ours. They owned 18% of Steel Dynamics. And Keith Bussey was running SDI then, and Keith thought he knew more about the scrap market than the scrap market itself. All right, there'll be oftentimes he say, "Hey, scrap's going to go up. We got to load up on scrap, and we have mountains of scrap." Yep. And we took the company public. We'd have write-offs, write-downs. Okay. Now, 2 out of 10 times Keith was right. So those were the 2 times that he kept bragging about. It's like the gambler goes to Vegas. What do they always tell you? The time I won. What about the other 20 times you didn't win? Okay. So Nucor, once Steel Dynamics bought OmniSource and Wall Street went crazy and thought, hey, you know, SDI secured their raw material for life. They hadn't. Scrap doesn't grow in a farm field, doesn't grow in an orchard. You still have to buy scrap month to month, whether you own the processing line or not. But Nucor then saw that big spike in SDI's stock price. They said, oh, we've been paying David J. Joseph all this money for brokerage for how long? We might as well buy David J. Joseph. Nucor stock goes up. My philosophy is I'm going to do what I think we have a chance to do best, which is convert scrap metal that we buy at monthly market prices more efficiently than anybody in the world. And I'll sell my steel at market prices. I'll let the scrap community take care of all the scrap. I'll convert it, and I'll let other people buy my steel and process it.
Wait a second here, but I got to give Bob, speak up here now, because I know that is not your philosophy. You're an integrated company from the point of, from what I could tell, from the point of view of collecting the scrap and processing it and then passing it on. So are you guys disagree on that?
I think to the question that there.
No. There's a corporate answer that Bob can give, and then there's your personal answer.
I want Bob.
Let's see how brave you are.
What Bob is going to do is
I want to be invited back too. Right. So I want to make sure Bob is still here.
Yeah. I'm going to address George's comment, and what George's comment was, hey, what is going to be the philosophy of Nucor? And it's evolving. That's what I will say. We're going to do it. I told you we're doing it at some steel mills, and some steel mills, you know, we'll look at this grade may get commoditized. It may not. We have to be open to things. We have to evolve as a company. We make it sometimes at our scrap yards, and that's an opportunity for us, and we can do more of that. We don't do it at every one. So that's evolving. I think to the comment of, you know, how we buy scrap metal as in general, hey, we have 10 brokerage offices across the country that we're really proud of. And it's an information business. And what we want to do is we want to see a steel business in the United States that's prosperous. And we want to make sure that we have a competitive advantage in that business.
Okay. Now
you're a good politician.
You're
a good politician. Absolutely. So thank you all for participating. I want to give each of you a chance to circle back to our opening point, which I think was really important. Obviously, you do different things. You have different technologies. Here's what I got out of this. Technology is going to make a huge part in the growth of this industry. And I'm incredibly impressed, not knowing very much about how far you've come in our most recent lifetime in the efficiencies and the savings for the important materials across all of the metal panels that I'm going to be talking with. But you guys came out talking about getting this message out. So while you may disagree about where the levels of scrap are, or whatever else it is, I'm going to give you each one last thought on how you want to move the industry, as the recycling part of this industry, the scrap industry, the ferrous part of it, how you want to move that forward in not only politically, I guess you're all lobbying, but in the minds of the public. What do you think it's important to go retail with this message? You talked about high school. You talked about grade school. How do you get this message out?
Yeah, I mean, there was a comment made about that earlier, but there is a lot of effort that we're putting. We have 32,000 people, and that's 32,000 families on the backside of that we're putting food on the table, paying for college tuition, all those things. We want to have a great message to the industry on what it is that we're doing in this space. And I think it is a branding thing that we have to continue to build out. And we're there every day to tell that story, how great of a story it is, that the safety that, this is we're year to date the safest year in Nucor history. And if you think about the industry that you were talking about, how unsafe that was and how far we've come from that. These are great things. These are great paying jobs. And we have to continue to pour that energy that's already being poured in there.
David, let me ask you a question because I read the disclaimer. I'll read it again. We follow a strict code of conduct and antitrust policy. So the question that I ask naively is, so can you guys get together to get that message out? Does it go through ReMA? Is that the umbrella for it? Or how do you get the message out?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think people in this room understand that the recycling industry, the steel production industries, they're tied together at the hip. And in my humble opinion, having played a role in the growth of these industries for 30 years, they're both great. Great opportunities. The steel industry several years ago, 10 years ago, tried to follow, it's just milk or drink milk ad campaign. They had the steel studs. A hurricane came. All the other houses that were built with wood were knocked down the steel studs. But that didn't really resonate. And the issue is those type of ads are to the consuming public. You got to figure out in the colleges and universities, the trade schools. Finally, I think people are realizing you don't have to have a 4-year degree to make a lot of money in this country. And I think that will help some of the money that the government is redirecting from, let's say, universities that have a liberal arts, et cetera, at the trade schools. That will benefit. But when people understand, and it'll take time, what's going on in Northeast Arkansas, right where I'm putting my most recent mill, I've been involved in $8 billion of investment over the last 11 years in a little 5-mile square radius. That's not happening anywhere else in this country. And here's what's going to happen. When you see a company like Nucor who's investing in nuclear power research, that's the wave of the future. This is something people should really pay attention to. What is the best partner for one of these big data centers? They need 99% reliability of power. All right. That means the utilities have to have excess generating capacity to provide that reliability. Come knock on my door. Data center, you want my power? I'll give it to you in 10 minutes. And during that 10 minutes, I'll operate my battery storage facility that I'll give it to you instantaneously. Therefore, Mr. Utility, you don't have to build excess capacity or generation capacity. And once we get tied to the Googles, the Amazons, then people who go to these high-tech universities, they'll say, whoa. So really, I think just a natural evolution.
Boy, that was a peek into the future, a really interesting peek in the future.
Well, it's not that far away. It's tomorrow, not years from now. It's tomorrow. Now, nuclear is going to take a little while.
But you're generating the energy that...
Hell, yes. So what I want to do, I want to get one of these decommissioned nuclear submarines that's operated on a nuclear facility for 20 years, tie it to a dock. I'll build a steel mill right next to it and hook up to it. All right? It's safe. It's reliable. It's clean. These things are happening. Nucor is leading the way. We're trying to be a little voice in the market.
We're out of time, but that's a beautiful way to end. I know there are people that are going to meet you outside for coffee or cocktails that have more questions, but I thank you very much. You have updated my knowledge about the ferrous industry dramatically, and more importantly, you've made it exciting for the future. Thank you very much. Thanks to our audience.
Thank you, Terry.